Hello everyone, this is the LEGO Nintendo Entertainment System, and I purchased this when it first came out. However, a lot of time passed before I built it. I finally got it built over on Twitch. I did it live across 2 different sessions, and now I can give you my review. The stuff you build in this set includes the system itself, one single controller, a Super Mario Bros. Cartridge, which is very cool in how it goes in and all, and then the TV is kind of its own whole thing, which includes the screen that can rotate around and kind of play the game for you in a way that's pretty cool, I have to say. I'm going to start with the focus on the console, which is incidentally the very first thing that you build in the set. It pretty much looks like a gray box, right? I mean, you can clearly see where the different bricks and tiles and plates start and end, at least on the outside. The inside of it is a completely different story, because to get some of the specific spacing of some of the elements requires a whole bunch of stuff. Plus there is an entire very cool mechanism. Plus there is an entire Easter egg. A very cool Easter egg actually built into this. But from the outside, I mean, this has so few studs on it, and if you're familiar with anything that I've ever said about Lego, you know that I personally am not afraid of Lego studs. I know that a lot of fans of Lego like it to be more serious with fewer studs, but this is actually great. The way that this works out, because they're going for a specific look, they were trying to go for, or the designer was trying to go for something that looked realistic in 1-to-1 scale. It's not quite 1-to-1 scale, but it's close enough. It works. It totally works. And the best news for me of the entire thing was that every single thing that looks like a decoration, with, well, only 3 exceptions, and I'll point those out, everything else involves prints. They made so many prints for this set. So that's a print, 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 that's a print. Those are all separate pieces, you know. There's another print over there, and you notice that this little section in here is built upside down. So everything from the printed black piece up to this dark gray ledge is actually upside down. You can see the shapes of the arch style windows. So that's actually cool, and that requires that this print be actually upside down itself. And then around the back, there are no additional prints here, but this is nice that they did basically copy the full design of this, including all of its inputs and jacks. So this one over on the left is for your AC adapter, you know, to get power to the whole thing. This is the channel 3 or channel 4 selector. When using this output, which is your RF output, you would connect that to your coax or to your screw terminals on your classic TV, where an antenna, physical antenna, would connect from this through an adapter. And then my personal favorite feature of this console by far is this. You've got just that little lip there. It's actually fairly complex building how that was created there with the 1x4 panel piece. But you've got the little lip to lift this up and then be able to put a cartridge into the tray. Now you can see some of the colored pieces inside. You know, if you get light down in there, it doesn't bother me too much, but the mechanism works fantastically well with 2 spring pistons, or, you know, they look like shock absorbers, but they're just working as springs, and it feels right. Like, I'm a big fan of getting spring tension right in toys that have them. This definitely gets it right. It feels right, so that when you insert this cartridge, which is itself very nicely built. Okay, this does have 2 of the 3 whole stickers in the entire set. Said I would call those out. So here they are now. You can actually insert this into the machine. They've got the suggestion of the green colored PCB that you can see, sorry about the focus there, from the underside. So you can do the ritual blowing the dust out of that slot. Now this does not look as good on the other side. It is so thin they were not going to be able to get this to have, you know, completely smooth sides on both sides, but it's fine. I think it's more than fine, actually. I think this is very good. But the best thing is that you insert this in there onto a little tray, you push it down, and then it stays. It stays in place. You close that up. Cool. To get it out, it's just like on the original, on the real thing. You push down, let it up, and you can take it out. It's perfect. The controller ports, honestly, are not perfect. They look nothing like the, I think it's 7-pin connectors that they would use. But I think it's an okay compromise that this does actually work in a Lego way, in a Lego build, to allow you to connect something to it. So it's actually fairly easy to connect this and and take it off. It works well enough, just doesn't look as authentic as most other things on the console. The controller itself, though, is once again great. This introduces once again many new prints. So print, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 prints there. You know, it's 2 different types, but it goes all the way around. Nintendo logo is, of course, itself a print. Unfortunately, you cannot push these buttons. That's something that I was looking forward to. I was really hoping that you could at least push the buttons here, or at least push down the D-pad as just one big thing. You know, if you could have a little rocker inside of it, but they just weren't able to get that sort of functionality out of this small space. This is trying as best possible to emulate both the shape and size of the original. And as I understand it, it is very, very, very close. This uses just a long black pneumatic hose as your cable to the console. I think this is done fantastically well for something that is at a production level. You know, it's not a very, very fragile display-only mock. You can grab this, you can twist it, you can really put pressure on it. It's well built, it's solid. It also went together fairly easily. Oh, but what about that Easter egg I mentioned earlier on? It's right here. Do you see it? Do you see the secret that's built into this? Well, you can't, because it's really well hidden away. It's a micro-scale version of an entire level of Super Mario Brothers. Look at that. They had that many extra pieces, that much extra space. It's totally just fan service there. Completely unnecessary, but hey, it's cool. The net result of the whole thing is a wonderful display piece that at first glance doesn't even look like Lego. This is really a conversation starter sort of thing where, you know, somebody who is not aware of the set may visit you and see this on display on a shelf and be like, oh, you've got an original Nintendo, and wow, the gray is so good. Like, it looks like has it been refreshed, or is that a replica or something? And then they get up closer to it, and that's only then, when you get closer, that you start to realize that, wait a minute, this is not the original thing. Why are there so many slots in here? What the heck? The Lego, what? It's a good surprise. All right, let's check out that thing. If you've heard the following from me, I do apologize if I've been kind of a broken record about it. But if you've not heard it, it is important that I share with you the admission that I was not a Nintendo kid. Though I was a child of the 80s, I went straight from direct plug into the TV and plays one game sort of things, like Pong, the original arcade home game, to the Commodore 64. So I personally don't have an emotional attachment to the Nintendo console or to the replica that this set gives us. However, I am much more nostalgic for old school TVs. So I personally was very much looking forward to this thing here, just to harken back to the old days of how things used to be. Of course, we had a black and white TV, was what I remembered most of before the Commodore days and even getting into it, but just most of the earliest memories I have of watching TV were black and white ones. But this right here represents a very, very, very fancy, although very, very small TV. It's fancy because not only does it have a color screen represented here, but also, in contrast to the low-tech branding that Lego put on here, again, using yet another print for that, with metallic print for the lettering, actually. But over on the side, you have controls, independent controls for contrast and brightness, both. That is rather deluxe. If I'm honest, I don't think we had those sort of controls until much later on in the 80s, at least in my household. This is a control knob for your regular volume, your mono volume. Buttons, just small, probably soft push buttons are represented here. Again, lots more prints, as opposed to a switch. And then UHF, VHF, again, just a button as opposed to a switch. And then this is pretty nice, the way that Lego implemented the tuning dial. It kind of works in a way, with the notchiness and also the clicks behind it. Oh, it got stuck. Hey, what are you doing? Go, there we go. Got stuck at the top there for some reason. There we go, yes. It's kind of a simple mechanism inside. You got to build it to understand it, to appreciate it, and you got to feel it to appreciate it as well. It's very stiff, as well it should be. It's good. It's a little bit tough to get a good glare off of this side to really see the texture, but that represents the screen over a front-facing speaker, and that's done with a huge just panel of upside-down 1x1 plates. So each of those is just an upside-down 1x1 plate underneath of a larger single plate that's then suspended from the side. So we're looking at the entire underside here. That was not as annoying as I expected to line all those up, because you can just use a separate piece and just get them all flat at the same time, one row at a time, or you can go by columns. It's entirely up to you, but it's much easier to accomplish as an assembler than it appears. Around back, this has your audio and video inputs, as well as a coax jack down here. But again, continuing with the theme of this being a relatively fancy and, dare I say, modern example of a classic clunker TV, this does not have any screw terminals. I kind of missed that, the flathead screw terminals where you'd plug in the two wires from an external antenna unit. So this is just relying on coax, which frequently would be used for cable, for cable TV, but could also be used with an adapter for external antennas. But this does have, of course, a built-in antenna. It's just TVs would typically allow you to do external inputs through that as well. This one does not have a telescoping feature, unfortunately, / thankfully. Those would bend and break and stuff. So this one just is able to come off, and then you can start to angle it up. It'll go completely vertical if you want, but yeah, it does well enough. It's good enough, to be sure. And on the back, this has the final sticker in the set, which is this whole specs panel and your list of model numbers and serial numbers, and also any declarations for your local regions, safety agencies, government safety agencies, to let you know as a consumer that this has passed and everything. Over here on this side, I don't know if this is supposed to represent something in particular. I don't recognize what those would be. This is where power would be connected down here. So the power cord itself is missing, but I don't know if these were supposed to represent something. This is built correctly. I had to look multiple times because it bugged me. Why are those there? But I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you do know. This has to do with the main mechanism, though. This is the main thing that this is all about. Before I get to that, let me just quickly do this. Pull the whole thing off the stand. Yeah, comes with a stand. So you don't need to use this if you don't want to. Doesn't use too many pieces, doesn't waste too many pieces, but it works well enough, if you want it. Right, so here's the big feature, and you'll see more prints as we go, and we'll take a closer look at the Mario character itself. But you turn the crank manually by hand over here on the side. It'll only go one way. It'll prevent you from going the other way, but you turn the crank, and this scrolls an entire level past. Well, not an entire level, but the greater part of a level, and little Mario jumps around and goes through the whole thing. And when you're not doing this awkwardly, trying to reach across the camera without blocking the view of the viewers looking at the video, it goes much more smoothly. So let me show you that. As you might expect, this system is based on Lego's largest track system that is going around essentially a cartridge inside of there. And this was not as bad to assemble as I expected. I heard many terrible things about the process of assembling this, especially lining up all those 1x1 tiles and 1x1 plates as well. I personally tend to hate lining up 1x1s, but in this case, it just felt like it was what was intended here. It felt necessary to get the level of detail, to get the sort of pixelated idea of the whole thing to work, and I didn't find it to be that big of a bear. You have to take your time if you want every single thing to be lined up exactly perfectly or fairly closely, and I didn't get any of this done perfectly myself, but I'm satisfied with the results. I love the fact that they included prints again. So many different prints, and you do get spares. We'll take a look at the spares later on, but the whole process felt just fine to me until I got to the very end. putting the top on. Literally, the top of the TV is the last thing that you put on to end everything. It's not too many pieces. I found that this was not working so well. It was actually getting caught at a couple of spots as I went around. It was built just fine. There was nothing wrong with the assembly, but I did have to massage the whole mechanism inside this cartridge, this whole belt system. I had to massage that around. There was a little bit of warping in the whole thing. I also massaged the outside. And when I say that, I mean just literally applying pressure and torque and trying to straighten the thing out, because I could visually see that this plane here of the backdrop that goes by was slightly at an angle in one direction. It was closer to the front on this side, and I needed to get that side to go back just a little bit very carefully before closing up the entire top. So that is something to look out for if you buy this and you build it. I've heard of a lot of people having trouble with the whole thing getting stuck or not being smooth, and then other people have had great luck with it. It's not because of your building prowess or lack thereof. If you're careful and you go through it, you build on a nice, hard, flat surface, you may still encounter issues. Just take some time to diagnose it. It can be solved. I promised I would show a closer look at this thing, this Mario, which is not the most colorful thing, but it is definitely accurate. I originally thought, wait a minute, why did they do such a terrible job with that when everything else looks so bright? No, this is actually rather accurate to a specific version of original Super Mario there. And this is a unique piece with a unique print that they came up with just for this. The last major thing I need to cover is integration with this guy, because these two actually do work together, even though they are done as completely different systems, different scales, for different purposes and all. This will work to some degree with the TV unit in particular, because there's a panel, there's a panel on top. You push this in and it reveals a new space. This has a scannable barcode that works with the electronic Mario, and then as you scroll the backdrop by, there are colored tiles that come by that give additional information to that electronic Mario. Let's check out the full experience. The selection of spare or leftover parts is a lot more special than usual, not only because of the number of pieces, but also because of the inclusion of these parts over here. Every single printed 1x1 in the set is included in duplicate over here, so that has a lot more value than is typical. And then the sticker sheet, again, like I said, just had the 3 stickers. 2 of them are used for the cartridge and 1 for the back of the TV. Everything else is done with prints. I paid $230 US for this, and it came with over 2,600 pieces. So the price to part ratio, well, I mean, as usual, take that with a grain of salt. This does have a lot of 1x1 pieces used for the entire belt that goes around in here, and also a lot of 1x2s. And, it's not like they're bricks or anything. They're just plates and tiles. So rather small. Overall, the amount of stuff that I get here, the volume of stuff that I get here, doesn't quite feel like it adds up to that price. However, when you consider what all is actually there on the inside, the mechanism, even the little hidden feature off to the side, but how this mechanism works, I get it. It's definitely something where you need to build it to understand the value, to feel the value. I think if you just look at it from the outside, maybe if you're a Nintendo super fan and you're not aware that you could get an entire working Nintendo system for less than this, a real one, then you could, be just kind of starstruck, awestruck by just seeing the whole thing, like, my childhood. But to really feel the value, you've got to put the whole thing together. It's a process. This went together fairly quickly. It was fairly simple. This definitely requires some time and some focus. I think the net result is pretty dang excellent. Again, I personally think that this is a very fancy TV, but that's just personal bias. One thing is definitely missing from this, though. One major thing is missing, and I am definitely disappointed in that. There is no connection between the TV and the console. So they've got the wire for the controller. That's great and all. They've got the jacks, but where's the cable? Where are your either two lines or your one line? It would have been great to get actually the RF adapter as just a separate, very simple little box, and then you could have one wire going from back here and then one wire going to here. And of course, that's a slippery slope, because then we have to think, where are the power cables for this and for this both? You don't need all that, but at the very least, this should have had some way to connect between these two. I'm willing to bet it was because of the slippery slope of it not having the power cables. They decided to leave that out entirely, but I missed that. I missed the connection between these two, because as I showed you clearly, you can just play with this by itself. You can display it by itself, and you can play with it by itself. You can get most of the functionality of this set just from here, just from this box, actually, without even the stand, just with this box. And that feels a little bit awkward that there's no physical connection between these two whatsoever. Of course, it's not going to be Wi-Fi. It's not going to be wireless. This is from the 80s. I did definitely enjoy the integration with this. As simple as it is, it was nice to take advantage of this. This system does not try to sell these to you. However, if you're already a Mario fan and you already had something from this system, including the starter set, or even if you only had the starter set, the ability to get more for your investment in this, out of this, or vice versa, is good and makes sense, and yeah, it just adds a lot of joy. And being able to have the sound play as it goes added so much more life to this. And again, I keep looking over here because so much of it is in here. This, I think, is the better thing for Nintendo fans. This is the thing for retro fans, for kids of the 80s. This is the stuff here. But most of the parts in the set, most of the functionality in the set ended up over here. Did take a little bit of tweaking, like I said, at the end to make sure that it went smoothly. And for folks who built it once and it worked perfectly, that's great. That doesn't help anybody who built it once and did a very good job of it and had it not working perfectly right from the start. Do understand that different people will have different building experiences, even if they're doing a careful job and they do it right. This is definitely a case where things need to be just right. And if you're just a little bit off, a little bit unlucky, and when you put a couple of assemblies together and things didn't settle quite perfectly, this is a case where you will be punished for that, and you have to correct it. Overall, though, this experience was fantastic. I hope that many of you had a chance to follow along with my build. 2 sessions of builds. One session was this. The other session was this over on Twitch. Whoa! Don't go anywhere. Thank you for watching this review. I hope that this showed you everything that you wanted to see about these. Sorry, I'm not a Nintendo fan myself, but I could definitely enjoy all of this regardless very much. I'm glad that I finally got all of this experience. So take care. Talk to you again soon. Bye for now.